What would you do if your husband brought his mistress to your funeral? 300 people watched in horror as Marcus Bennett walked into his pregnant wife's memorial service with another woman on his arm. She wore red, not burgundy, not wine, bright, blood red. His wife Eleanor was not even cold in her casket. But here is what nobody knew. Eleanor had discovered the affair 6 weeks before she died, and while investigating her cheating husband, she uncovered something far more terrifying than lipstick on his collar. The man she married was not who he claimed to be. His real name was not Marcus Bennett, and the real Marcus Bennett had been dead for 8 years. Eleanor could not escape her marriage alive, but she spent her final weeks building a trap that would destroy him from beyond the grave. When the lawyer opened her will, every secret came flooding out. The DNA results, the hidden identity, the murder nobody knew about. This is the story of a woman who refused to be silenced, even in death. Stay with me until the end. I promise you, the justice she delivered will leave you breathless. The woman in the red dress arrived on his arm, and 300 mourners stopped breathing. The sound came first, a crystal champagne flute slipping from trembling fingers. The explosion of glass against marble echoed through Westbrook Memorial Chapel like a gunshot, sharp and final. No one moved to clean it up. No one could move at all. Catherine Hartwell stood frozen, her hands still curved around nothing, staring at the entrance of the chapel where her son-in-law had just appeared. Her daughter's husband, the father of her unborn grandchild, the man who was supposed to be devastated by grief. He was not alone. White lilies filled every corner of the sacred space. Their fragrance hung heavy in the air, sweet and suffocating, the smell of death dressed up as beauty. Thousands of dollars worth of flowers surrounded a mahogany casket polished to a mirror shine. Photographs of a beautiful woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile lined the walls. Eleanor Hartwell at her college graduation. Eleanor on her wedding day. Eleanor holding up a positive pregnancy test, tears of joy streaming down her face. Eleanor Hartwell, 32 years old, 8 months pregnant when she died, and her husband had just walked into her funeral with his mistress on his arm. Marcus Bennett stood in the doorway like a man arriving at a charity gala, not a funeral. His salt and pepper hair was perfectly styled, not a strand out of place. His designer black suit probably cost more than most people made in a month. His jaw was clean-shaven, his posture radiating the confidence of a man who had never been told no in his entire life. The woman beside him was young, 28 maybe, stunning in the way that made other women feel inadequate. Dark hair cascading over bare shoulders, perfect makeup, a figure that turned heads. And she was wearing red, not burgundy, not wine, not maroon or crimson, or any shade that could be excused as a mistake. Red, bright, arterial red, the color of blood against snow, the color of passion at a place of mourning, the color of disrespect so profound it bordered on violence. The whispers began immediately, spreading through the chapel like wildfire. That is his mistress. At his pregnant wife's funeral. Eleanor is not even cold in the ground. How dare he? How dare he bring her here? Richard Hartwell stood frozen at his daughter's casket. He was 62 years old, a self-made billionaire who had built an empire from nothing. He had started with a single rental property and transformed it into Hartwell Properties, one of the largest real estate development companies on the East Coast. He had faced hostile takeovers that would have destroyed lesser men. He had survived market crashes that bankrupted his competitors. He had endured personal tragedies that would have broken most people. Nothing had ever stopped Richard Hartwell, but this stopped him. His security detail moved toward Marcus, 3 large men in dark suits ready to remove the intruder by force. Richard raised one hand without turning around. The men halted instantly. His face was a study in controlled devastation, the kind of expression that costs something to maintain, every muscle locked in place, every emotion buried beneath iron will. Only his eyes betrayed him. They burned with something that went beyond anger, beyond grief, beyond anything that had a name. In the third pew from the front, Samantha Rhodes gripped the wooden bench until her knuckles turned white. Sam was 32, the same age Eleanor had been. They had been best friends since their freshman year of college, roommates for 4 years, bridesmaids at each other's weddings. The kind of friends who finished each other's sentences and knew each other's secrets. Sam knew things. Eleanor had told her everything in those final weeks, and she knew what was coming. She watched Marcus guide Vanessa down the center aisle as if they were arriving at a society event instead of a funeral. He nodded at acquaintances he passed. He offered small, sad smiles to people who had known Eleanor since childhood. He played the grieving widower with the skill of an Oscar-winning actor. They sat in the front row, the row reserved for immediate family. Vanessa crossed her legs, her red stiletto bouncing slightly with each breath. She looked around the chapel with barely concealed boredom, as if wondering how long this would take. Jonathan Hartwell approached from the side aisle. He was 35, Eleanor's older brother. He had his father's build and his mother's temper, a combination that made him formidable when provoked. Right now, he was very much provoked. "You need to leave," Jonathan said, his voice low but sharp as broken glass. "Now." Marcus looked up with an expression of wounded dignity, as if he could not believe anyone would treat him this way. "I am Eleanor's husband. I am not going anywhere. That woman is not welcome here. This is a family service. That woman is my guest." Marcus's voice carried just enough to reach the nearby pews. "And I would appreciate it if you showed some respect for my grief. I have just lost my wife and my unborn child. This is the hardest day of my life." The audacity, the sheer, breathtaking audacity of the statement hit Jonathan like a physical blow. His hands curled into fists at his sides. Every instinct screamed at him to grab Marcus by his expensive collar and drag him out of the chapel, to punch that smug expression off his face, to make him pay for this final, ultimate insult to Eleanor's memory. But his mother's voice cut through the red haze of rage. "Jonathan, not here. Not." Catherine Hartwell had somehow crossed the room without anyone noticing. Her face was pale as paper, her eyes red-rimmed from days of crying, but her voice was steel forged in fire. "We will not make a scene at my daughter's funeral. That is what he wants. We will not give it to him." Jonathan looked at his mother, looked at Marcus, looked at Vanessa in her obscene red dress. He stepped back. The tension remained, thick enough to taste, but the immediate crisis passed. The service began. Pastor Williams stood at the pulpit, a man who had baptized Eleanor as an infant and watched her grow into a remarkable woman. His voice trembled as he spoke words that felt hollow against the reality of what had happened. He talked about Eleanor's kindness, how she had volunteered at the Children's Hospital every Saturday for 10 years, how she had funded scholarships for underprivileged students without ever putting her name on them, how she had treated the janitor at her father's company with the same respect she showed the board of directors. He talked about her generosity, the anonymous donations that had saved the local animal shelter from closing, the checks she had written to help employees facing medical emergencies, the time and energy she had poured into causes that would never make headlines. He talked about her love for her unborn child, the nursery she had decorated with her own hands, the baby shower where she had cried tears of joy, the names she had picked out, both girl and boy, because she wanted to be surprised. He called her death a tragedy. He did not know the half of it. Marcus delivered the eulogy. He walked to the podium with measured steps, each one conveying appropriate sorrow. He gripped the edges of the wooden stand, his wedding ring catching the light from the stained glass windows. His eyes glistened with tears that looked almost real. "Eleanor was my everything," he began, his voice cracking at perfect moments. "From the moment I met her at that charity auction 5 years ago, I knew she was special. She had this light about her, this warmth. She made everyone around her feel like they mattered." He paused, wiping at his eyes with a handkerchief that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. "She was my partner, my best friend, my reason for getting up each morning. When she told me she was pregnant, I cried. Real tears. Because I knew she would be the most amazing mother. I knew our daughter would be the luckiest child in the world." In the third pew, Sam Rhodes watched the performance. She watched the rehearsed grief, the calculated pauses, the tears that appeared on cue and disappeared just as quickly. She knew the truth. She knew that Marcus had not cried when Eleanor told him about the pregnancy. He had gone pale, asked if she was sure, mentioned something about bad timing. She knew that Marcus had not been at that charity auction by accident. He had researched Eleanor for months beforehand, learned her habits, her interests, her weaknesses. She knew what Eleanor had discovered in those final weeks of her life, and she knew what Eleanor had planned. But Eleanor Hartwell had known about Vanessa for 6 weeks before she died, and she had discovered something far worse than an affair. The memory came unbidden. 3 weeks before the funeral, Eleanor was still alive. She stood in her bathroom, 8 months pregnant, staring at herself in the mirror. Her face was pale despite the pregnancy glow everyone kept complimenting. Her eyes were hollow, dark circles underneath from nights of broken sleep. Her hands trembled against the marble countertop as if she had suddenly developed a chill. "You stupid, stupid woman," she whispered to her reflection. "The signs were all there. How did you not see them?" On the counter sat a receipt from the Four Seasons Hotel, a room for two, champagne, strawberries dipped in chocolate, room service breakfast for two, charged to their joint American Express card, the one she had access to but rarely checked. He had not even tried to hide it. Eleanor picked up the receipt with fingers that shook. Read it again. Read the date, November 15th. Read the room number, the presidential suite. Read the total, $3,400 for one night, November 15th. Their anniversary trip to her parents' lake house had been canceled that week. Marcus had claimed a business emergency, something about a deal falling through. He had promised to make it up to her. Now she knew how he had spent that weekend. She folded the receipt carefully, precisely, and put it in her pocket. She would need evidence. She would need proof. She would need everything she could gather before she decided what to do next. She looked at her reflection one more time, at the woman who had believed every lie, who had trusted every promise, who had built her entire future on a foundation of sand. "No more," she said quietly to the stranger in the mirror. "No more." Back at the funeral, the service was ending. Marcus placed his hand on Eleanor's casket with what he probably thought was tender reverence. His wedding ring caught the light. He bowed his head in what looked like prayer, but was probably calculation. Behind him, Gregory Morrison checked his watch discreetly. Gregory was 58 years old, the Hartwell family attorney for 3 decades. He had drafted Richard's first business contracts when Hartwell Properties was just a dream. He had created the trust that protected the family fortune from predators and gold diggers. He had helped Eleanor write her first will at 21 when she came into her trust fund. And he had helped her write her last will just 3 weeks ago, in secret, with instructions that would shake the foundations of everything Marcus Bennett thought he knew. The will reading was scheduled for 2 hours from now at the Hartwell estate. But Gregory knew something the others did not. Eleanor Hartwell was about to speak from the grave, and when she did, nothing would ever be the same. 6 weeks before her death, Eleanor Hartwell's morning began like any other Tuesday in October. She woke at 7:15 to an empty bed. The sheets beside her were cold, meaning Marcus had left hours ago. "Business meeting in the city," he had texted at 5:30. "Did not want to wake you, love you." She had smiled at the message then. Now she wondered if any of it was true. Eleanor made herself tea in the gleaming kitchen of their $5 million home in the suburbs. Decaffeinated Earl Grey, because the pregnancy book said caffeine was risky after the first trimester. She added honey from the local farmer's market because Marcus teased her about her sweet tooth, but always made sure the pantry was stocked with her favorites. She ate toast with butter and strawberry jam. She scrolled through news headlines on her tablet, pausing at a story about a mother and daughter reunited after 40 years. Tears came easily these days. The doctor said it was hormones. She felt the baby kick against her palm and smiled. "Good morning, little one," she whispered to her belly. "Are you hungry too?" By 9 o'clock, Eleanor was restless. The house was too quiet. The housekeeper did not come until Thursday. Her mother had offered to visit, but Eleanor had insisted she needed time alone to rest. She wandered through the rooms, looking for something to occupy her hands and mind. The nursery was finished. The baby shower thank you notes were written and mailed. The hospital bag was packed and waiting by the front door. For the first time in months, Eleanor had nothing to do. That was when she decided to organize Marcus's home office. It was not something she normally did. Marcus was particular about his space, almost territorial. He kept the door closed when he worked. He had asked her, gently but firmly, to leave his filing alone because he had a system that worked for him. But Eleanor was nesting. Her doctor had explained that pregnant women often felt compelled to clean, organize, prepare. Some ancient instinct driving them to make everything perfect for the baby's arrival. Marcus would understand. He always understood. She started with the bookshelves, dusting leather-bound volumes that Marcus collected but never read. They were for show, she realized now. Props for the successful businessman character he played. Then the filing cabinet, color-coded folders arranged alphabetically, tax returns, investment statements, property records, everything perfectly organized. Everything exactly where it should be. Then his desk. It was a massive antique piece, mahogany with brass handles, supposedly once owned by some railroad baron. Marcus had paid $60,000 for it at auction. Eleanor had thought it was excessive. Marcus had said it was an investment. She wiped down the surface with a microfiber cloth, organized the pens in his cup, straightened the photograph of their wedding day that sat in a silver frame. That was when she noticed the drawer. A small drawer on the left side of the desk, nestled between two larger ones. She had seen it 100 times but never paid attention. It was just a drawer, but when she tried to open it, it would not budge. Locked. Eleanor stared at the locked drawer for a long moment. A strange feeling crept over her, something cold and uneasy settling in her stomach. Why would Marcus lock a drawer in his home office? She tried to dismiss the thought. Everyone had private things. Everyone deserved some space that was just their own. She was being paranoid, pregnancy hormones making her suspicious over nothing. But the feeling would not go away. She looked for a key, checked the desk surface, checked the other drawers, all of which opened easily and contained nothing remarkable. Checked the bookshelf nearby, checked the coat rack in the corner where Marcus sometimes hung his jacket. Nothing. She went upstairs to their bedroom, checked his nightstand, his dresser, the closet where his clothes hung in perfect order, arranged by color and season. In his sock drawer, beneath a row of Italian cashmere socks that cost $50 a pair, she found a small silver key. Her heart was beating faster now, though she did not know why. Some part of her, some instinct buried deep, was screaming at her to stop, to put the key back, to close the drawer and never think about it again. She went back downstairs. The key fit the lock perfectly. The drawer opened. Inside was a phone, black, sleek, the latest model, not the phone Marcus carried with him every day. A second phone, hidden. Eleanor's hands trembled as she picked it up. The screen lit at her touch, asking for a passcode. She tried his usual password. Their anniversary, 07192019. It worked. The home screen appeared. Messages, photos, calendar, all the normal apps. She opened the messages. Hundreds of conversations appeared, all with the same contact. Someone named V with a heart emoji. Eleanor sat down on the floor of her husband's office, her pregnant belly making the position awkward, and began to read. The messages spanned 2 years. 2 years of I love you and I miss you and I cannot wait to see you again. 2 years of I wish I could wake up next to you every morning and soon baby soon and she does not suspect anything. 2 years of photographs that Eleanor wished she could unsee. Vanessa in lingerie. Vanessa in nothing at all. Vanessa in bed with sheets tangled around her perfect body. 2 years of plans and promises and passion that belonged to someone else. The affair had started before Eleanor's pregnancy, before their last anniversary trip to Paris, when Marcus had sworn eternal love to her beneath the Eiffel Tower, before he had promised her a lifetime of happiness, before he had put his hand on her belly and said our baby would be the luckiest child in the world. Everything was a lie. Everything she thought she knew was wrong. Eleanor sat on that cold floor for a very long time. She did not cry. She did not scream. She did not throw the phone against the wall or storm out of the house or call her mother or her best friend or anyone at all. She was too shocked to do any of those things. She did what any woman would do when her world collapsed without warning. She went to the kitchen. She made tea. She stood at the counter, watching the tea grow cold, staring at the wall but seeing nothing for 47 minutes. The clock ticked on the wall. The refrigerator hummed its low mechanical song. Outside, somewhere in the neighborhood, a dog barked at nothing. Inside, Eleanor Hartwell's marriage crumbled silently. Finally, at some point that felt like hours later, but was probably only minutes, she moved. She poured the cold tea down the sink, watched it spiral away, washed the cup with soap and water, dried it carefully and put it away in the cupboard. Then she went back to his office. The phone was still on the floor where she had left it, still unlocked, still displaying Vanessa's smiling face in the most recent photo. Eleanor photographed every message, every picture, every conversation, every promise, every lie. She sent the images to her personal email address, the one Marcus did not know about, the one she had kept from before their marriage. Then she put the phone back exactly where she had found it, locked the drawer, returned the key to its hiding spot beneath the cashmere socks, and she never said a word. Over the next 2 weeks, Eleanor Hartwell became someone she barely recognized. She requested duplicate statements for every credit card they owned, joint accounts, personal accounts, business accounts Marcus had told her not to worry about. The statements arrived in plain envelopes sent to a post office box she had rented under her maiden name. She pored over every line, every transaction, every charge, hotel rooms, expensive ones, the Four Seasons, the Ritz-Carlton, the St. Regis, always suites, always for two, restaurant bills, places Eleanor had never been, romantic spots with dim lighting and private tables, hundreds of dollars spent on wine and tasting menus, jewelry purchases, thousands of dollars at Tiffany, at Cartier, at Harry Winston, pieces Eleanor had never received, pieces that had never been wrapped and given with a kiss on her birthday or their anniversary. 2 years of spending on another woman while Eleanor believed her marriage was happy. She pulled their phone records next, requested detailed statements going back 3 years, late-night calls to the same number, conversations at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning when Marcus was supposedly on business trips, calls that lasted hours while Eleanor slept alone in their bed. She created a folder on her laptop, named it Home Renovation Ideas, filled it with screenshots and photographs and scanned documents, evidence of her husband's betrayal, hidden in plain sight where he would never think to look. Marcus noticed nothing. He came and went as always. Business trips that were probably rendezvous, late meetings that were probably dinners for two, emergencies that pulled him away at odd hours. He kissed her forehead each morning, told her he loved her, asked about the baby, about her appointments, about the nursery decorations. He rubbed her swollen belly each night, talked about names, about futures, about the family they were building together. Eleanor smiled and nodded and died a little more with each passing day. Her mother called one afternoon while Eleanor sat alone in the kitchen, staring at the evidence spread across the table. "Darling, how are you feeling? How is my grandchild?" Eleanor looked at her reflection in the darkened window, the mask she wore, the performance she gave, the lies she told to match the lies she had been told. "Perfect," she said, her voice steady and bright. "Everything is perfect, Mom. Could not be better." "You sound tired." "Just pregnancy fatigue. The doctor says it is normal in the 3rd trimester." "Make sure Marcus is taking care of you. Make sure he knows how lucky he is." Eleanor closed her eyes. "He does, Mom. He tells me every day." 2 weeks after discovering the affair, Marcus announced he was hosting a dinner party. "Important people," he said over breakfast. "Investors, business partners, people who need to see that Marcus Bennett has a stable, happy home life. Can you handle it?" Eleanor looked at her husband, at the man she had married, at the stranger wearing his face. "Of course," she said. "I will make sure everything is perfect." She spent 3 days preparing. Menu planning with the caterer, flower arrangements with the florist, seating charts that maximized strategic conversations. Everything a perfect wife would do for her successful husband. The guests arrived at 7 o'clock on a Friday evening. 12 people in total, investment bankers, real estate developers, a tech entrepreneur who wanted to partner on a new project, their wives wearing designer gowns and expensive jewelry, air-kissing cheeks and complimenting the house. Eleanor greeted them in a navy blue silk maternity dress that cost $1,800, pearls her grandmother had given her on her 21st birthday, her wedding ring, a 5-carat diamond that suddenly felt like a handcuff. She was perfect, gracious, charming, the ideal hostess. And then Vanessa Crane walked through the front door. She was tall, dark-haired, stunning in an emerald green cocktail dress that probably cost as much as a used car. She moved with the confidence of a woman who knew exactly how beautiful she was and expected the world to acknowledge it. Marcus stepped forward smoothly, his hand finding the small of Vanessa's back with practiced ease. Everyone, I would like you to meet Vanessa Crane. She is the interior designer helping us redesign our downtown office building. Brilliant work, absolutely brilliant. Eleanor extended her hand, her hostess smile firmly in place. Lovely to meet you. Marcus has told me so much about the project. Their eyes met. Something flickered in Vanessa's expression. Guilt? Triumph? Perhaps both, mixing together into something ugly and complicated. The pleasure is mine, Mrs. Bennet. Marcus speaks so highly of you. I bet he does, Eleanor thought as she shook Vanessa's hand. I bet he told you I was cold, distant, that our marriage was already over in everything but name, that he was only staying for the baby, or the money, or appearances. I bet he told you exactly what you needed to hear. Dinner was a masterclass in torture. Eleanor sat at the head of the table, playing her role to perfection. She laughed at the right moments, light and musical, asked questions that made the men feel smart and the women feel included, made sure everyone's wine glass stayed full and their plates were never empty. And across the table she watched. She caught the looks between Marcus and Vanessa, quick glances when they thought no one was paying attention, hidden smiles behind raised glasses, their fingers brushing when they passed the bread basket, lingering a moment too long to be accidental. They thought they were being discreet. They thought no one could see. But Eleanor saw everything now. The blinders had been ripped away. The fog had lifted. And what remained was sharp and clear and devastating. Halfway through the main course, a perfectly prepared beef tenderloin with red wine reduction, Eleanor excused herself. She walked calmly to the powder room on the ground floor, locked the door behind her, sat on the edge of the marble bathtub. Her hands shook. Her breath came in short, ragged gasps. The baby kicked hard, as if sensing her distress. She pressed her palm against her belly and counted to 10, to 20, to 50. It is okay, she whispered to herself, into the child growing inside her at the wire. We are going to be okay, I promise you. Somehow, some way, we are going to be okay. She stayed in that bathroom for 10 minutes, practiced breathing, practiced composure, practiced the mask she would have to wear for the rest of the evening and all the evenings that followed. Then she fixed her makeup, smoothed her dress, checked her reflection one final time. Perfect, serene, unbreakable. She returned to the dinner table and finished her meal. That night, hours after the last guest had left and the caterers had cleaned up, Eleanor could not sleep. Marcus was out again. Business drinks with one of the investors, he had said, could run late. Do not wait up. She did not ask where. She did not need to. She already knew. She went back to his office. The second phone was gone. He must have taken it with him. But she was not looking for the phone this time. She was looking for more. The home renovation ideas folder on her laptop was growing, but it was not enough. An affair was painful, humiliating, devastating, but it was not illegal. She needed something more, something that would give her real leverage, real power. She searched his desk more carefully this time, pulled out every drawer, felt along the inside for hidden compartments, checked the false bottom she had read about in novels. That was when she found it. A second locked drawer, this one hidden behind a false panel in the bottom left corners of the desk. She would never have noticed it if she had not been looking. The seam was nearly invisible, the mechanism perfectly concealed. It took her 20 minutes to find the key, taped to the underside of a filing cabinet, secured with black electrical tape that blended into the metal. Her heart pounded as she fitted the key into the lock. Her hands shook as she turned it. Her entire world cracked open as she pulled out what was inside. A passport, blue cover, United States of America. But the name inside was not Marcus Bennett. Derek Sloan, born August 15th, 1988, Ohio. And the photograph was her husband's face. A death certificate, official looking. State of Colorado, Marcus William Bennett. Date of death, August 23rd, 8 years ago. Cause of death, hiking accident. Body never recovered. Photographs. 2 young men standing together at the base of a mountain trail, backpacks on their shoulders, smiles on their faces. One was the man she knew as Marcus. The other was a stranger with lighter hair and an open, trusting expression. And a letter, handwritten on lined paper, the edges worn and yellowed with age. To whoever finds this, I know the truth. Derek Sloan killed Marcus Bennett on that hiking trip. He hid the body somewhere in the mountains. He waited 2 years, then assumed Marcus's identity. He has been living as Marcus Bennett ever since, stealing his life, spending his money, pretending to be someone he is not. I cannot prove it, but I know it is true. Someone needs to stop him before he hurts anyone else. The letter was unsigned. Eleanor sat on the floor of her husband's office, the evidence scattered around her, and tried to make sense of what she was seeing. Her husband was not Marcus Bennett. Her husband was Derek Sloan. And Derek Sloan may have murdered the real Marcus Bennett to steal his identity. Her hand went to her belly, where her daughter kicked and turned, oblivious to the nightmare her mother had just uncovered. She was married to an imposter, a con man, possibly a murderer, and she was carrying his child. The next morning came too soon. Eleanor had not slept. She had spent the entire night in Marcus's office, reading and rereading the documents, photographing everything, putting it all back exactly where she had found it. She heard Marcus come home at 6:15, heard his car pull into the garage, heard the engine shut off, heard the door open and close. She was already in bed by then, lying perfectly still under the covers, her eyes closed, her breathing measured and even. The performance of a woman deep in peaceful sleep. She listened to him move through the house, heard him drop his keys in the ceramic bowl by the front door, heard him pour himself a glass of water in the kitchen, heard his footsteps on the stairs. The shower started. She listened to the water run, listened to him hum a song she did not recognize. He was in a good mood. Of course he was. He had spent the night with his mistress while his pregnant wife lay awake in the dark, discovering that her entire marriage was built on murder and lies. Eleanor counted the minutes, listened to him dress, heard him pad down the hallway in socked feet, smelled his cologne, expensive and distinctive, as he entered the bedroom. He leaned over her, kissed her forehead with lips that had probably kissed Vanessa hours before. "Love you, Ellie," he murmured. "Get some rest. You need it." Every cell in her body screamed. Every instinct demanded she recoil, shove him away, demand the truth. But she did not move, did not flinch, did not let a single muscle betray what she knew. "Love you too," she whispered, as if half asleep. She heard him smile, heard him walk away, heard the front door open and close, heard his car start in the driveway. Only when the engine faded into the distance did she allow herself to breathe. She ran to the bathroom and threw up everything she had not eaten. "I am not crazy," she thought as she knelt on the cold tile floor, her forehead pressed against the porcelain. "I know what I found. He is not Marcus Bennett. He is someone else entirely. And I am trapped in a house with him. I am carrying his child. I am 8 months pregnant and alone and married to a man who might have killed someone to steal their life. What am I supposed to do now?" She spent that morning paralyzed by fear. Every creak of the house made her jump. Every shadow seemed threatening. Every car that drove past the window might be Marcus coming home unexpectedly, might be Derek coming to check on the woman who knew too much. She could not tell her parents. That was her first instinct, to call her father. To let Richard Hartwell's money and power solve this problem the way it solved every problem. But Derek would see it coming. The moment Richard's lawyers or security team got involved, Derek would know Eleanor had discovered the truth. And then what? Would he run? Would he try to take her with him? Would he decide she was too dangerous to leave alive? She could not go to the police. Not yet. She had suspicions and documents, but she did not have proof. Not the kind of proof that would hold up in court. Not the kind of proof that would put him in prison before he could hurt her. The prenup. That damn prenup she had signed at 29. So in love she had not even read the fine print. If she left him, she got nothing. If he left her, she got nothing. The only way she could touch the Hartwell money was if Marcus was convicted of a crime or if she died. If she died. The thought landed in her mind like a stone in still water, sending ripples in every direction. What if Derek had considered that option? What if he was already planning? She touched her belly, felt her daughter move. "We are in danger," she whispered. Both of us. By noon, Eleanor knew what she had to do. She picked up her phone and called Sam. "I need to see you," she said without preamble. "Not at my house. Somewhere we have never been together. Somewhere no one would expect us to go." Sam heard something in her voice. Fear, desperation, something broken that had not been there before. "There is a coffee shop on Maple Street, the one that used to be a bookstore in that Victorian building. I will be there in 30 minutes. "Thank you, Sam. Thank you." Eleanor drove carefully through the suburban streets, checking her mirrors obsessively, making sure no one was following. She took a roundabout route, doubling back twice, parking in a lot 3 blocks away from the coffee shop. Paranoid. She was being paranoid, or maybe she was finally being smart. The coffee shop was small and dim and smelled like old books and fresh espresso. Exactly the kind of place she would never normally visit. Perfect. Sam was already there, sitting at a corner table with her back to the wall. Her face changed the moment she saw Eleanor walk through the door. "My God, Ellie, what happened to you?" Eleanor sat down heavily, her pregnant belly making the small chair uncomfortable. She looked at her best friend, at the woman she had known for more than a decade, at the only person in the world she trusted completely. "I need you to listen," Eleanor said. "I need you to listen to everything I am about to tell you. And I need you to not say anything until I am finished." Sam nodded slowly. "Okay, I am listening." Eleanor told her everything. The affair, the second phone, the messages spanning 2 years, the photographs she wished she could unsee. Sam's expression shifted from concern to anger to protective fury. Then Eleanor told her about the other discovery. The passport in the name Derek Sloan, the death certificate for Marcus William Bennett, the photographs of 2 men who went hiking together and only one who came back, the unsigned letter accusing Derek of murder. Sam's face went from furious to horrified to pale as a ghost. "Ellie," she said when Eleanor finally stopped talking, "this is criminal. This is not just an affair. This is identity theft. This is fraud. This might be murder. We need to call the police right now." Eleanor shook her head. "And say what? My husband might be using a dead man's identity. I might be married to a murderer. They will need proof, real proof, evidence that will hold up in court. And the moment Derek knows I suspect anything, the moment he thinks I might expose him, I am in danger." She put her hand on her belly. "We are in danger." Sam stared at her friend. The weight of the situation settled over them like a physical thing, heavy and suffocating. "Then we get proof," Sam said finally, quietly, carefully, without him knowing. "That is what I was thinking. Do you have a plan?" Eleanor almost smiled. "I am starting to." Over the next 2 weeks, Eleanor Hartwell transformed herself. She was no longer just a pregnant wife waiting for her husband to come home. She was an investigator, a strategist, a woman fighting for her life in the life of her child. She hired a private investigator, cash only, a man named Raymond Garrett, who came highly recommended by a divorce attorney Sam had contacted on Eleanor's behalf. Garrett was 55, former FBI, with a face like crumpled leather and eyes that had seen everything. She met him at a different location each time: public parks, shopping mall food courts, the back booth of a diner 40 miles from her house. She paid from a hidden account her father had set up for her years ago, what he had called mad money, just in case. She had never understood what just in case meant until now. Garrett worked fast and asked few questions. Within a week, he had answers. The real Marcus William Bennett had been a trust fund kid from Greenwich, Connecticut. Old money, established family, degrees from Exeter and Yale. Everything handed to him since the day he was born. He had died in a hiking accident in the Rocky Mountains 8 years ago. Solo trip, supposedly. His body was never recovered. The search parties looked for 2 weeks before giving up. The mountains kept their secrets. But Marcus had not gone hiking alone. His companion on that fatal trip was a man named Derek Sloan. Derek Sloan had grown up in foster care in Ohio. No family, no money, no prospects. He had bounced between group homes and temporary placements until aging out of the system at 18. After that, the records became spotty. Small-time cons, petty theft, nothing violent, but nothing honest either. He had met Marcus Bennett at a bar in Denver 2 months before the hiking trip. They had become friends, drinking buddies. Marcus liked Derek's edginess, his street smarts, his stories about a life so different from his privileged upbringing. Derek liked Marcus's money. They went hiking together in late August, two men going into the wilderness. Only one came back. Derek told the rangers that Marcus had slipped on a rocky trail and fallen into a ravine. He had tried to save him but could not. The body was too far down to retrieve. The rangers believed him. Why would they not? He was distraught, traumatized. A man who had just watched his friend die. Case closed. 2 years later, Marcus Bennett reappeared. He contacted his mother, Virginia Bennett, claiming to have survived the accident. He said he had suffered a head injury that caused amnesia. He had wandered for weeks, been picked up by a family in a remote cabin, slowly recovered his memories over the course of 2 years. It was a ridiculous story, impossible. The kind of thing that only happened in soap operas. But Virginia wanted to believe. Her son was back from the dead. Her miracle. She did not question too closely, did not look too hard at the small differences in his appearance, the subtle changes in his mannerisms. She welcomed him home. She gave him access to his trust fund, and Derek Sloan became Marcus Bennett. Raymond Garrett sat across from Eleanor in the back booth of a diner in Trenton. "Mrs. Hartwell," he said quietly, "I am 90% certain your husband killed Marcus Bennett on that hiking trip, hid the body somewhere in the mountains where it would never be found, then waited 2 years for things to cool down before assuming his identity." Eleanor nodded. She had known. Some part of her had known since she found those documents. "I need DNA proof," she said. "Something that cannot be disputed. Something that will hold up in court." Garrett wrote something on a napkin, slid it across the table. "Virginia Bennett, the real Marcus's mother, she lives in Greenwich still. If you can get her to cooperate, if we can get DNA from the man claiming to be her son and compare it to something she has from the real Marcus, we can prove they are not the same person." Eleanor looked at the address, the phone number. She thought about her daughter kicking inside her, about the man she had married, about the life she had built on a foundation of corpses and lies. "I will make her cooperate," Eleanor said. That night, Eleanor sat in the nursery. She did not turn on the lights. The darkness felt appropriate somehow, comforting even, a place to hide while she figured out what to do next. The room was perfect, pink walls like the inside of a seashell, white furniture that cost more than most people's cars, a mobile of butterflies hanging over the crib, each one hand-painted in colors she had chosen herself. She sat in the rocking chair Derek had helped her assemble, rocked back and forth, back and forth. The chair creaked softly with each motion, a rhythmic sound like a heartbeat. Her hand rested on her belly. The baby kicked. "I am going to protect you," Eleanor whispered to the darkness. "No matter what it costs me, no matter what I have to do, you are going to grow up safe and loved and free from all of this." She rocked and rocked, "Even if I have to burn everything down to make it happen." Outside, an owl called in the trees. The wind rustled the leaves, the moon passed behind clouds. Inside, Eleanor Hartwell made her plans, and the walls listened to every word. The funeral had ended 3 hours ago. 300 people had filed out of Westbrook Memorial Chapel, many of them in tears, all of them in shock. The image of Marcus Bennett arriving with his mistress would be the talk of every country club and dinner party for months to come. Now the mourners had reconvened at the Hartwell estate for the reception, a sprawling property in the hills overlooking the city, purchased by Richard Hartwell 20 years ago when his company first broke into the $100 million mark. White columns, manicured gardens, rolling lawns that seemed to stretch forever. The kind of house that whispered old money and quiet power. Inside, the reception was an exercise in awkward tension. People stood in small clusters, speaking in hushed voices, stealing glances at Marcus whenever he walked by. The catering staff circulated with trays of canapes and champagne that no one seemed to want. Marcus moved through the crowd like a man born to tragedy. He accepted condolences with perfect grace. He wiped away tears at appropriate moments. He spoke of Eleanor with such apparent tenderness that even the guests who had witnessed the red dress debacle found themselves almost moved. Almost. Vanessa waited in his car in the driveway as instructed. Marcus had promised her it would only be a few hours. Then they would leave together, start their new life, finally be free. She had believed him. She always believed him. In the wood-paneled study at the back of the house, Richard Hartwell stood at the window staring out at nothing. He had not eaten, had not drunk, had not spoken to anyone except in monosyllables since the funeral ended. His face was a mask carved from stone, betraying nothing of the volcano churning beneath. His daughter was dead, his grandchild was dead, and the man responsible was eating salmon puffs in his living room. Gregory Morrison appeared at his elbow, materializing silently in the way of longtime servants and trusted advisors. "Richard, it is time." Richard did not turn from the window. "You have everything?" "Everything Eleanor prepared, the video recordings, the audio files, the documentation, the DNA results. It is all ready and waiting." "And Detective Holloway?" "On standby, she and 2 officers are parked at the service entrance. They will enter on my signal." Richard nodded once. Sharp, military, the gesture of a man accustomed to giving orders and having them obeyed. "Then let us end this charade once and for all." The family gathered in Richard's private library. It was a room designed to intimidate. Dark wood paneling that absorbed sound and light. Leather chairs that cost more than most people's annual salaries. First edition books lining the walls. Hemingway and Fitzgerald and Faulkner, worth a small fortune if anyone ever bothered to appraise them. A fireplace dominated one wall, cold now despite the chill outside. Above it hung a portrait of Eleanor painted when she was 25. Before Marcus, before the lies, before everything. She was smiling in the painting, her whole life spread before her like a feast. Richard took his customary seat at the head of the room, a high-backed leather chair that resembled nothing so much as a throne. Catherine sat beside him, her hand finding his beneath the armrest, holding tight. Jonathan stood by the fireplace, his arms crossed, his expression thunderous. Gregory Morrison sat at the antique desk in the corner, folders and devices spread before him like weapons waiting to be deployed. And Marcus Bennett settled into one of the guest chairs with the easy confidence of a man who believed he was about to inherit a fortune. He was wrong. The library door opened one more time. Sam Rhodes walked in. Marcus's confident expression flickered. "What is she doing here? This is a private family matter." Gregory did not look up from his papers. Mrs. Hartwell specifically requested Ms. Rhodes's presence for the reading. She was quite explicit in her instructions. Eleanor's friend has no business at a will reading. She is not family. She has no legal standing. Mrs. Hartwell felt otherwise. Gregory's voice was calm, almost bored. She left detailed instructions about who should be present. When her final wishes were read, Ms. Rhodes was on the list. "Would you like to see the documentation?" Marcus's jaw tightened. His eyes darted to Richard, to Jonathan, to Sam herself, looking for an ally, finding none. "Fine," he said finally. "Let us get this over with." Gregory cleared his throat. "Before I begin the formal reading of Mrs. Hartwell's last will and testament, I must inform you that Mrs. Hartwell left specific instructions about how this reading should be conducted. She prepared several recordings in the weeks before her death. She asked that they be played in full, without interruption, before any discussion of her estate." He reached for a small device on the desk, a digital recorder, the kind used for legal depositions. His finger hovered over the play button. "I should warn you, what you are about to hear may be disturbing." Mrs. Hartwell was very thorough in her preparations. He pressed play, and Eleanor Hartwell's voice filled the room. "Hello, everyone." Catherine gasped. The sound of her daughter's voice, so clear, so present, so alive, after watching her coffin lowered into the cold ground just hours ago. "If you are hearing this, I am dead. And if I am dead, there are certain things that need to be said, things I could not say while I was alive, things that have been weighing on my heart for weeks." A pause. The recording captured her breath, soft and measured. "Marcus, I want you to know something. I found out about Vanessa 6 weeks before I died." The room went absolutely still. Even the clock on the mantel seemed to stop ticking. "The affair, the lies, the hotel rooms you charged to our joint account at the Four Seasons and the St. Regis, and all those other places you thought I would never check. The jewelry you bought her at Tiffany with money that was supposed to be ours. I knew about all of it." Marcus shifted in his seat, the first crack in his composure. "Eleanor was confused," he said quickly. "The pregnancy hormones made her paranoid. She saw conspiracies everywhere. She accused me of things that never happened. I was not confused, the recording continued, as if anticipating exactly this defense. I was perfectly clear, more clear than I had ever been in my entire life. The evidence is documented, the proof is undeniable. And while I was investigating your affair, Marcus, I found something much worse. Another pause, longer this time. Building tension like a master storyteller. I know who you really are, Derek. The color drained from Marcus's face like water from a broken glass. Richard leaned forward, his hands gripping the armrests of his chair. Catherine pressed both hands against her mouth, her eyes wide with something between horror and confusion. Jonathan stepped away from the fireplace, his entire body rigid with attention, and Sam watched Marcus's reaction, watched the mask slip, watched the monster reveal itself behind the charming facade. The recording continued. I found the passport in the name Derek Sloan. I found the death certificate for Marcus William Bennett, dated 8 years ago, hiking accident in Colorado, body never recovered. I found the photographs of 2 young men who went into the mountains together when only one came back alive. Eleanor's voice was calm, controlled, the voice of a woman who had looked into the abyss and decided to jump. I know that you killed Marcus Bennett on that hiking trip, that you hid his body somewhere in those mountains where no one would ever find it, that you waited 2 years and then assumed his identity, that you have been living as Marcus Bennett ever since, stealing his money, charming his family, marrying his unsuspecting victims. Marcus stood abruptly, his chair scraped against the hardwood floor with a shriek that made everyone flinch. This is insane. This is absolutely insane. Someone has doctored these recordings. Someone is trying to destroy me. He reached for his phone. I am calling my lawyer right now. Sit down, Mr. Bennett. Gregory Morrison's voice cut through the room like a blade. Or should I address you as Mr. Sloan? I believe that is the name on your birth certificate. Security appeared at the library door. 2 large men in dark suits, the same ones who had been at the funeral. They stepped inside, blocking the exit. Marcus looked at them, looked at Richard, looked at the faces around the room, each one a mirror reflecting his exposure. He sat down, but the game was far from over. Eleanor's recording resumed. I spent 3 weeks gathering evidence, photographs, documents, witness statements. I hired a private investigator, a former FBI agent who knows how to find the truth that people try to hide. And I contacted Virginia Bennett, the real Marcus's mother. Gregory pressed another button. A screen descended from the ceiling, hidden behind a panel that Richard had installed years ago for business presentations. A video began to play. Virginia Bennett appeared on the screen. She was 70 years old, elegant despite her years, dressed in simple black that spoke of old money and older values. But her hands trembled. Her eyes were red from crying. 3 months ago, Virginia said, her voice cracking, a woman named Eleanor Hartwell contacted me. She told me things about my son, about the man I thought was my son, things that made me sick to my stomach. The video showed Virginia in a living room decorated with antiques and family photographs. She held a tissue in one hand, dabbing at her eyes. She asked me to help her prove the truth. I did not want to believe her. I could not believe her. My Marcus was back. My miracle. After 2 years of grieving, 2 years of thinking he was dead, he had come home to me. Virginia's voice broke completely. She paused, composed herself, continued. But Eleanor was right. Something had always been wrong. Little things that I told myself did not matter. He did not remember our family recipes. He called our old dog by the wrong name. He did not recognize his childhood best friend when we ran into him at the club. She took a shaky breath. I agreed to help her. I collected DNA samples from the man claiming to be my son, a coffee cup he left at my house, a cheek swab I took while pretending to check for a scratch. I sent them to 3 different laboratories just to be sure. The video paused on Virginia's devastated face. The results came back 4 weeks ago. All 3 labs agreed. The man I have been treating as my son for the past 6 years is not Marcus William Bennett. He shares none of Marcus's DNA. None. She held up a photograph. 2 young men standing together, arms around each other's shoulders, smiling at the camera. This is my real son, the one on the left. Marcus. He died 8 years ago in those mountains. And the man who has been pretending to be him ever since is a stranger, a monster. And I want the world to know what he did." The video ended. The screen went dark. In the library, no one spoke for a very long time. Marcus Bennett, who was not Marcus Bennett at all, sat frozen in his chair. His face had gone from confident to desperate to something that looked almost like defeat. Almost. "This is a setup," he said finally. His voice was different now, rougher. The cultivated accent slipping into something flatter, more Midwestern. "Those DNA tests were doctored. Someone is trying to frame me. Virginia never liked me. She probably paid to have the results falsified." "3 independent laboratories?" Gregory asked mildly. "With chain of custody documentation? With expert witnesses prepared to testify?" "That is quite a conspiracy theory, Mr. Sloan." "Stop calling me that. My name is Marcus Bennett. I am Marcus Bennett." Richard Hartwell spoke for the first time since the recording began. "My daughter knew." His voice was quiet, terrifying. She knew she was married to a murderer. She knew she was carrying the child of a man who killed someone and stole their life, and she could not escape. His hands shook the same way Eleanor's hands had shaken when she discovered the truth. Father and daughter connected by the same horror. "But she found another way." Eleanor's voice returned. "I know you are wondering why I did not just leave, why I did not run away in the middle of the night, why I did not take what money I could access and disappear." The room held its breath. "I was 8 months pregnant, Derek, with your child, and you had made sure I could not escape. The prenup I signed when I was young and stupid and in love made sure that if I left you, I would leave with nothing. No money, no resources, no way to support myself or my daughter." Her voice hardened. "But there was one thing I could control. One thing you could not touch, my will. The Hartwell family trust my father established when I was born. It cannot be accessed by any spouse, only inherited by blood, only distributed according to my final wishes." A pause. "So let me tell you exactly what you are getting, Derek Sloan." Another pause. "Nothing." Gregory Morrison opened a leather folder that had been resting on the desk. His movements were precise, deliberate, each one building the tension in the room like a conductor leading an orchestra toward its climax. "The terms of Mrs. Eleanor Hartwell's last will and testament are as follows." Marcus sat rigid in his chair. The charming widower facade had crumbled completely. In its place sat something harder, more dangerous. A cornered animal calculating its options. "To my husband, the man currently known as Marcus Bennett, I leave the following items." Gregory paused, letting the moment stretch. $1, symbolic payment for every lie he told me during our marriage. A strangled sound came from Marcus's throat. Not quite a laugh, not quite a scream. "The entirety of my personal estate, valued at $120 million, shall be placed in a charitable trust to be known as the Eleanor Hartwell Foundation. The foundation's mission will be to assist victims of domestic fraud and manipulation, providing legal resources, financial support, and counseling services." Gregory turned a page. "My shares in Hartwell Properties, which constitute 30% of the company and are currently valued at $280 million, shall pass directly to my father, Richard Edward Hartwell, to be held in trust. If my unborn child survives me, the shares will transfer to her on her 21st birthday. If my child does not survive, the shares will remain with my father's estate in perpetuity." Marcus found his voice. It was different now, sharper, stripped of the cultured veneer he had worn for years. "The baby, our baby. I am the father. I have legal rights to that child's inheritance. You cannot cut me out entirely." "Do you?" Eleanor's voice cut in. Another recording cued perfectly. "I had another DNA test done, Derek, one you did not know about." The room went silent again. "When I was 6 months pregnant, I told you I was having a routine amniocentesis. You did not come to the appointment. You said you had meetings. You said you trusted the doctors. You said I would be fine on my own." Marcus's face changed. Calculation replaced outrage. "But I was not checking for genetic conditions. At least, that was not the primary purpose. I was checking paternity." A pause. Imagine my surprise when I discovered I had been faithful throughout my entire marriage. The baby is yours, 100% Derek Sloan DNA, but here is what else the test revealed. The sound of papers shuffling came through the recording. Your DNA was compared against the National Criminal Database. It is standard procedure now in certain states for prenatal testing. Something about tracking genetic diseases. I do not fully understand the science, but the result was very interesting. Marcus stopped breathing. There was a match. Your DNA matched evidence collected at the scene of an armed robbery in Henderson, Nevada, 12 years ago. A robbery where a security guard named Thomas Whitmore was shot and killed. The silence in the library was absolute. You were never convicted because there were no witnesses who survived. No DNA match in the system because you had never been arrested for anything that required a sample. Until now. Catherine Hartwell's hand covered her mouth, the same gesture Eleanor had made when she first discovered the truth. Mother and daughter, separated by death, connected by the same horror. Gregory Morrison closed the folder. Mrs. Hartwell's documentation, including the DNA evidence from the prenatal test, has been forwarded to the Nevada District Attorney's Office. The case has been reopened. A warrant has been issued. Marcus lunged to his feet. This is entrapment. This is illegal. My lawyers will tear this apart. You cannot use medical tests as evidence in a criminal prosecution. This will never hold up in court. Perhaps, Gregory said calmly, that is for the courts to decide. But I suspect the Nevada prosecutors have other evidence now that they know where to look. 12 years is a long time, but forensic science has improved considerably. He glanced at his watch. However, the Nevada charges are not the most pressing concern at the moment. The library doors opened. A woman entered, middle-aged, professional, badge clearly visible on her hip. Detective Patricia Holloway, she said. Homicide Division. Marcus spun toward her. Homicide? My wife died in a car accident. The official report says brake failure due to wear and tear. There is no homicide investigation. Was it an accident? Detective Holloway asked mildly. She held up a manila envelope. 3 weeks ago, I received this package in the mail, postmarked the day before Mrs. Hartwell died. Inside was a letter. And evidence. She opened the envelope, pulled out several sheets of paper. Mrs. Hartwell wrote that if anything happened to her, I should investigate her husband immediately. She suspected her brake lines had been tampered with. She had overheard him on a phone call, speaking to someone about car problems that would make it look like an accident. The room had gone completely still. We had not examined the wreckage closely. Why would we? It looked like a standard accident. Worn brake lines on a mountain road. Tragic but not suspicious. She met Marcus's eyes. We examined it yesterday. The brake lines were cut, professionally done, made to look like gradual wear and tear over time. If we had not known exactly what to look for, we never would have found it. Richard Hartwell's hands began to shake. The same tremor that had afflicted Eleanor when she wrote that letter, when she faced her own mortality and kept planning anyway. You murdered her, Richard said. His voice was barely above a whisper. You murdered my daughter. You murdered my grandchild. Marcus backed toward the door. His eyes darted around the room, looking for escape, finding none. You cannot prove anything. This is all circumstantial. Any lawyer worth his fee will destroy your case. Perhaps, Detective Holloway acknowledged, but we have enough for an arrest. And once we start digging, Mr. Sloan, we tend to find more. Bank records, phone records, the identity of whoever you paid to tamper with those brakes. She nodded to the security guards at the door. Derek Sloan, you are under arrest for the murder of Eleanor Hartwell. You are also under arrest for the suspected murder of Marcus William Bennett. And there is a warrant out for you in Nevada on charges of armed robbery resulting in death. The list continued as handcuffs clicked around his wrists. Identity fraud, financial fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy, the crimes of a lifetime catching up all at once. Marcus fought. He twisted against the guards, pulled at the cuffs, snarled like a trapped animal. You think you have won? He glared at Richard, at Catherine, at Sam standing silent by the window. Eleanor was a fool. She could have had everything. All she had to do was look the other way. All she had to do was be a good wife. Richard Hartwell stepped forward. stood face to face with the man who had killed his daughter. My daughter was braver than you could ever understand. She knew she might not survive you. She knew you might kill her before she could expose you. And she chose to spend her final weeks making sure that if she died, you would not survive her. The guards began dragging Marcus toward the door. "This is not over," he screamed. "My lawyers will have me out by morning. I will sue every one of you. I will destroy your family. I will burn down everything you have built." No one responded. The door closed behind him. The room exhaled. And Gregory Morrison reached for one final recording. "There is one more thing," he said quietly. "Eleanor left a message specifically for her parents and for Ms. Rhodes. She asked that it be played after everything else." He pressed play. Eleanor's voice returned, softer now, almost peaceful. "Mom, Sam, if you are hearing this, I am gone and I am sorry." Catherine began to cry, not quietly, the raw, broken sobs of a mother who had lost her only daughter. "I am sorry I could not tell you what I was facing. I am sorry I had to bear this burden alone. But I need you to know something." A pause, I was not afraid, not at the end. I had accepted what might happen, and I had made my peace with it. Another pause, because I knew that even if I did not survive, the truth would survive, the evidence would survive, and justice would come. The recording faded for a moment. When Eleanor's voice returned, it was stronger. "Do not mourn who I was. Do not freeze me in tragedy. Remember me for this. I fought. In my own way, on my own terms, I fought back." The final words hung in the air like a blessing. And I won. Outside the Hartwell estate, Vanessa Crane sat in Marcus's car and waited. 2.5 hours had passed. He had promised 30 minutes, an hour at most. She checked her phone for the 100th time. No messages, no calls, no explanation for the delay. The red dress she had worn felt different now, wrong somehow. When Marcus had asked her to wear it, she had felt powerful, triumphant. The other woman finally stepping into the light. Now she just felt cold. She had known it was wrong to wear red to a funeral, had known what people would think, but Marcus had insisted. He wanted the world to see them together, wanted Eleanor's family to understand that the marriage had been over long before the car accident. He wanted to hurt them, she realized now. He wanted to twist the knife, and she had let him use her to do it. Movement at the main entrance caught her attention. Police cars pulling up the long driveway. 3 of them. Lights flashing blue and red against the manicured hedges. Her heart began to pound. She watched as the officers emerged from the vehicles, watched them enter the house, watched the minutes tick by on the dashboard clock. Then the front doors opened again. They were dragging someone, a man in a black suit, struggling against restraints, screaming words she could not hear through the car windows. Marcus. No, not Marcus. She had heard what the woman in the recording called him. That voice through the speakers in the ballroom, where she had snuck in to listen. Derek. She watched as they forced him into the back of a squad car, watched his face contort with rage as he fought against the handcuffs. He looked toward her once. Their eyes met through the glass. His expression was not fear, not sorrow, not love or regret or any of the emotions she might have expected from a man she had spent 2 years with. It was hatred, pure, burning hatred, as if she had betrayed him, as if this was somehow her fault. The squad car pulled away. The other police vehicles followed. Vanessa sat in the empty driveway, her hands shaking on the steering wheel. A security guard approached her window, knocked twice with his knuckle. She rolled down the glass. "Miss Crane," his voice was professional but cold, "you should leave the property now." "What is happening? Where are they taking him?" "Your boyfriend just got arrested. Multiple counts of murder, among other things." Murder. The word hit her like a physical blow. "I do not understand. Eleanor died in a car accident. It was in all the news reports." The brake lines were cut, deliberately sabotaged. Vanessa felt the blood drain from her face. "And if I were you," the guard continued, "I would find a good criminal defense lawyer. A very good one." "Why, what do you mean? I did not do anything." He looked at her with something that might have been pity. "Mrs. Hartwell left documentation suggesting you were aware of Mr. Sloane's true identity. that you knew he was not really Marcus Bennett, that you helped him maintain his cover when questions arose. That is not true. I did not know anything about that. Did you not? The guard shrugged. That is for the prosecutors to decide. But accessory to murder is a serious charge. I would start making phone calls if I were you. He walked away, leaving her alone in the car. Vanessa sat there for a very long time, unable to move, unable to think, staring at nothing while her entire world collapsed around her. The same paralysis that had gripped Eleanor 6 weeks ago when she discovered her husband's lies. The same frozen horror, but Eleanor had fought her way through, had turned her despair into action. Vanessa did not know if she had that strength. Inside the estate, Sam Rhodes finally allowed herself to break. She had held it together through the funeral, maintaining composure for Eleanor's parents. Through the will reading, staying strong, because that was what Eleanor had asked her to do. Through the arrest, watching the monster dragged away in chains. But now it was over. The adrenaline faded, the walls came down, and the weight of everything she had carried for 3 weeks crushed her completely. Catherine Hartwell held her. This woman who had just lost her daughter and grandchild, somehow finding the strength to comfort someone else's grief. You knew, Catherine said softly, her voice thick with tears. All this time, you carried this burden alone. Sam nodded, her body shaking with sobs. She made me promise. She said if anything happened to her, I had to stay quiet until the will was read. She had orchestrated everything perfectly. She did not want anyone interfering, anyone tipping him off before the trap was sprung. How long? How long did you know? 3 weeks. She told me everything 3 weeks before she died. The affair, the identity theft, the murder in the mountains. All of it. Catherine closed her eyes, imagining her daughter, 8 months pregnant, carrying that weight alone. Why did she not come to us? We could have helped. We could have protected her. She was afraid for you. She thought if you confronted Derek, if you tried to use Richard's resources against him, he would find out. And then she would be in danger. You would be in danger. Sam pulled back, wiping her eyes. She knew she was trapped. The prenup made sure she could not leave without losing everything. And she knew that if Derek suspected she was investigating him, he might act to silence her before she could expose him. So she prepared for her own death. Yes. Sam's voice broke. She spent her last 3 weeks making sure that even if she died, the truth would come out. The evidence would be delivered. Justice would be served. She reached into her purse, pulled out an envelope, worn and creased from being carried for weeks. She gave me this the day before she died, made me swear not to open it unless she was gone. Inside was a handwritten letter, Eleanor's familiar script, each letter precise and beautiful. Sam, the letter began, if you are reading this, I did not make it. I want you to know that you were the best friend a woman could ever ask for. You never judged me for staying with him. You never pushed me to leave before I was ready. You just loved me, exactly as I was, even when I was too blind to see the truth right in front of my face. Take care of my parents. They will need you. My father will throw himself into work, into the company, into anything that lets him avoid his grief. Do not let him disappear. My mother will blame herself for not seeing the signs. Tell her it was not her fault. Tell her I forgive her for anything she thinks she did wrong. And if my daughter survives me, tell her who her mother really was. Not a victim, a fighter. Someone who faced a monster and found a way to win, even if she did not live to see the victory. All my love, forever and always. Ellie, Sam pressed the letter against her heart, crying and laughing at the same time. She planned everything, even her goodbye. The days that followed moved with relentless speed. Derek Sloan was denied bail at his arraignment. The judge cited multiple factors: flight risk given his history of identity fraud, danger to the community given in the murder charges, lack of stable ties to the area since his entire life in the region had been built on lies. He was transported to the county detention facility to await trial. His court-appointed attorney filed motions that were quickly denied. His requests to contact potential character witnesses were rejected when those witnesses all turned out to be people who had known him as Marcus Bennett and wanted nothing more to do with him. Vanessa Crane was arrested 4 days later. The police came to her apartment at 6 in the morning, catching her as she was packing for a trip to Canada. obstruction of justice, accessory to fraud, possible accessory to murder, pending investigation. She cried in the booking room, swore she had not known about the identity theft, the murder, any of it, swore she was a victim too. The prosecutors did not believe her. Eleanor's documentation was thorough. Text messages between Derek and Vanessa that referenced his real name, conversations about maintaining his cover story, a particularly damning exchange where Vanessa reassured him that no one would ever find out the truth. She had known, maybe not everything, but enough. Virginia Bennett, the real Marcus's mother, held a press conference on the steps of the Greenwich courthouse. She was impeccably dressed in black, her silver hair perfectly styled, her posture straight despite the weight of her 70 years. Behind her stood a wall of family photographs, the real Marcus at various ages, smiling into the camera. "My son died 8 years ago," she said, her voice steady despite the tears rolling down her cheeks. "He was murdered by a man who then stole his identity and lived his life. That man married a wonderful woman named Eleanor Hartwell, and when she discovered the truth, he murdered her too." She held up a photograph of Eleanor, young, beautiful, full of life. "This woman was brave beyond measure. She contacted me when she discovered the deception. She asked for my help in proving the truth, and she died making sure that truth would come to light." Virginia's voice cracked for the first time. "My son Marcus was kind, generous, the best parts of his father and me combined. He deserved better than to have his name and legacy stolen by a monster." She straightened her shoulders. "Eleanor Hartwell deserved better than to be married to that monster and murdered when she tried to escape." She looked directly into the cameras. "I will spend the rest of my days making sure their stories are told, making sure the world remembers who they really were, and making sure that justice is served." The story went national within hours. Cable news covered it around the clock. The man with 2 identities, the pregnant wife who investigated her own husband, the will reading that exposed a murderer. True crime podcasts devoted special episodes to unraveling the details. Documentary filmmakers started making phone calls. Publishers offered 7-figure advances for the exclusive rights to the story. People called it the crime of the decade. Richard Hartwell did not care about any of it. He stood in his daughter's empty bedroom at the estate, surrounded by the possessions she would never use again. Her books, her photographs, the college diploma she had framed and hung with such pride. Catherine found him there at midnight, sitting on Eleanor's bed, holding a stuffed elephant she had carried since childhood. "I used to be able to protect her," Richard said, his voice hollow. "When she was little, I could fix anything. A scraped knee, a broken toy, a mean kid at school. I had the power to make everything better." Catherine sat beside him, took his hand. "This was not something you could fix. This was not something anyone could fix. I should have seen it. I should have known something was wrong with that man. I invited him into our family. I gave him my daughter. We all did. We were all fooled." Richard looked at the photograph on Eleanor's nightstand, her wedding day. She was radiant in white, Marcus standing beside her with that charming smile. "She knew," he said. "At the end, she knew what he was, and she still could not escape." He closed his eyes. "But she found a way to win, even from the grave. She found a way to destroy him." He looked at the elephant in his hands, remembered buying it for Eleanor on her 5th birthday, remembered her carrying it everywhere for years. "That is who my daughter was. That is who I will remember." He stood slowly, his joints protesting the movement. "Let us go to bed, Catherine. Tomorrow we start the foundation." The night before she died, Eleanor Hartwell sat at her kitchen table and wrote 3 letters by hand, one for her parents, one for Sam, and one for herself. The letter to herself was simple, just a few lines on expensive stationery, the kind her mother had always insisted she use for important correspondence. "You did what you could. You protected who you could. And if this is the end, it is the end you chose, not his, yours." She sealed the envelope, wrote her name on the front, put it in a drawer where no one would find it until she was gone. It was 3:17 in the morning. Marcus was asleep upstairs, worn out from whatever he had been doing until 2, with Vanessa, probably. Eleanor no longer cared about the affair. The affair was the least of his sins. She sat alone in the kitchen, rubbing her belly, feeling her daughter move beneath her palm. Restless tonight. Maybe she sensed something. Babies were intuitive that way, or so the book said. Eleanor had named her already. In her mind, in her heart, Hope. Not because she felt particularly hopeful at the moment, but because hope was what she wanted her daughter to represent. For herself, for other women trapped in impossible situations. Hope that there was always a way out, even when every door seemed locked. I am sorry, she whispered to the baby inside her. I am sorry I cannot guarantee your safety. I am sorry I chose this man without knowing who he really was. I am sorry for everything I am about to put you through. She sat in that kitchen for 47 minutes. The tea she had made grew cold again. She did not drink it. She just sat and felt her daughter move and tried to find peace with what was coming. She thought about running, taking the small amount of cash she could access and disappearing in the middle of the night. She could go to Canada, to Mexico. Somewhere Derek would never find her, but he would find her. She knew that with bone-deep certainty. He had found Marcus Bennett in the wilderness of Colorado and killed him. He would find a pregnant woman on the run, no matter how far she went. She thought about telling her father, letting Richard Hartwell's money and power solve this problem the way it had solved every problem in her privileged life. But Derek would see it coming. The moment lawyers or investigators or security teams got involved, he would know. And then what? He would run. Or worse, he would decide that Eleanor was too dangerous to leave alive. There was no escape, not while she was breathing. So she had made another plan. If I die, she thought, so does he, in every way that matters. She had spent 3 weeks building a case that would survive her, evidence stored in multiple locations, letters prepared for every contingency, recordings that would speak the truth she might not live to tell. Detective Holloway would receive her package the day after her death. Gregory Morrison had the will and the recordings locked in his safe. Sam had the letter and instructions. Virginia Bennett had the DNA results and the courage to use them. Every piece was in place. Every trap was set. All that remained was to see if she would live to spring it herself, or if she would die and let her preparations speak for her. She went to the nursery one last time. The butterflies on the mobile turned slowly in the air from the heating vent. Pink, blue, yellow, green, each one perfect, each one representing a future that might never come. Eleanor sat in the rocking chair. Let the darkness hold her. I love you, she whispered to her daughter. Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever happens next week, whatever happens to me, I love you, and I will protect you, even if I have to do it from beyond the grave. She rocked back and forth, felt her daughter kick, counted the movements like prayers. 1, 2, 3. I am not afraid, she said, and discovered it was true. I have accepted what might happen, and I have made my peace. 4, 5, 6. I did everything I could. I prepared for every possibility, and now I have to trust that it will be enough. 7. The next morning, Eleanor drove to see Sam. She brought coffee from their favorite shop, pastries from the bakery on 3rd Street. She made it seem like a normal visit, 2 pregnant women enjoying a sunny October morning. But she also brought the letter, the envelope, the instructions for what to do if the worst happened. If anything happens to me, she said, pressing the envelope into Sam's hands, do not open this, just hold on to it. And when the time comes, you will know what to do. Sam's face was pale. Her hands shook as they took the envelope. Ellie, what are you saying? What is going to happen? Maybe nothing. Maybe I am being paranoid and everything will be fine. But you do not believe that. Eleanor was quiet for a long moment. I believe that Derek Sloan killed someone to steal their life. I believe that he has been willing to do whatever it takes to protect his secret, and I believe that I have become a threat to that secret. She touched her belly, felt hope kick. I have to prepare for the possibility that he will decide to eliminate that threat. Then leave, right now. Come stay with me. We will figure something out. I cannot. The prenup, the money, the paper trail I would leave if I tried to run. He would find me, Sam. He would find me, and it would be worse than if I stayed. So what? You are just going to wait for him to kill you? No. Eleanor's voice was steady, certain. I am going to make sure that if he does kill me, he destroys himself in the process. They hugged for a long time. longer than normal, the kind of embrace people share when they know it might be the last. "I love you," Eleanor said. "You are the sister I never had." "I love you too. Please be careful." "I will." But they both knew it might not be enough. That afternoon, Eleanor drove toward home. The roads were winding, mountain passes that cut through the hills between the city and the suburbs. Beautiful views of valleys and forests turning gold with autumn. She noticed when the brakes felt different, softer than usual, less responsive. Her heart rate increased. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel. A hairpin turn approached. She pressed the brake pedal harder. The car slowed, but not enough. The world began to spin. She thought about her daughter, about her parents, about Sam. She thought about Derek, and she hoped the trap she had built would destroy him utterly. Then there was impact, pain, the sound of metal twisting and glass shattering, and then nothing at all. The trial began 6 months after Eleanor's death. The prosecution's case was overwhelming. Eleanor's recordings, authenticated by 3 different forensic experts, Virginia Bennett's testimony about the DNA results, Detective Holloway's detailed explanation of how the brake lines had been sabotaged. The defense tried to paint Eleanor as unstable, paranoid, a pregnant woman driven to delusion by hormones and isolation. The jury did not buy it. They saw a woman who gathered evidence while knowing she might be killed for it, a woman who prepared for her own death with meticulous precision, a woman who faced a monster and refused to let him win. They saw a hero. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," the prosecutor said in her closing argument, "Eleanor Hartwell could not escape her marriage alive. The prenup made sure of that. The isolation made sure of that. The danger she faced every day made sure of that." She paused, letting the words settle. But she was not powerless. She used the tools she had, her intelligence, her resources, her determination. And she made sure that even in death, she would speak the truth. The prosecutor held up a photograph of Eleanor, the one from her office, the one where she was laughing at something off camera. This woman knew she might die, and she chose to spend her final weeks building a case that would destroy the man who killed her. That is not paranoia. That is not hormones. That is bravery. She turned to face the jury directly. "Give Eleanor Hartwell the justice she died for." The deliberation took 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. First-degree murder of Eleanor Hartwell. Second-degree murder of Marcus William Bennett. Armed robbery resulting in death. Identity fraud. Financial fraud. Wire fraud. Conspiracy. The list went on and on. Sentencing. Life without parole. No possibility of release. Derek Sloan was led away in orange shackles, his wrists and ankles chained together. He did not look at anyone, did not speak. The charming con man had nothing left to say. Richard Hartwell addressed the press on the courthouse steps. "My daughter Eleanor was the bravest person I have ever known. She faced a monster alone. She documented his crimes knowing he might kill her for doing so, and she arranged for justice from beyond the grave." His voice caught for a moment. He steadied himself. "Today is not a victory. Victory would be having my daughter back, having my granddaughter back. Today is just justice. Cold, necessary, not nearly enough." He looked at the sky as if speaking to someone the cameras could not see. "But it is what Eleanor fought for, and I will spend the rest of my life honoring her memory." That night, Sam sat alone in her apartment and watched the news coverage. The verdict, the sentencing, Richard's statement, the legal experts analyzing what it all meant. She poured herself a glass of wine, Eleanor's favorite, a French Burgundy that she could not really afford, but bought anyway. She raised the glass toward the television screen, where Eleanor's photograph filled the frame. "You did it, Ellie. You actually did it. He is going to spend the rest of his miserable life rotting in a cell because of what you built." She drank deeply. "I am so proud of you, and I miss you so much it feels like someone carved out part of my chest." Tears rolled down her cheeks, mixing with the wine. "But I am going to keep going. Just like you asked. I am going to take care of your parents and run your foundation and tell your story to everyone who will listen." She finished the glass, poured another. "And someday, when this hurts a little less, I am going to go to Italy, like you always told me to. I am going to eat too much pasta and drink too much wine and think about you every single day. She raised the second glass. To you, Ellie, to the fighter, to the friend, to the best person I have ever known. She drank until the bottle was empty, and then she cried until she fell asleep. 4 months after the verdict, Vanessa Crane accepted a plea deal. The prosecution had offered her two choices: go to trial and risk 15 to 20 years in prison, or cooperate fully, testify against Derek in the Nevada robbery case, and receive a significantly reduced sentence. It was not really a choice at all. She sat in a small room at the district attorney's office, her lawyer beside her, and told them everything she knew. How she had met Derek at an art gallery opening 3 years ago. How he had charmed her with his sophistication and his wealth and his attentiveness. How he had told her his marriage was over. That Eleanor was cold and distant and withholding. That they were only staying together for appearances, for business reasons, for the family money. How she had believed him. Every word, every promise, every lie. When did you first learn he was not Marcus Bennett? The prosecutor asked. Vanessa stared at the table, at her hands folded in her lap, at anything except the faces of the people who would decide her fate. About 8 months ago, he got drunk one night, really drunk. Started talking about his childhood in Ohio, foster homes, group homes. I said I thought he grew up in Connecticut, and he laughed, said something about how that was Marcus's life, not his. Did you ask him what he meant? I tried, but he passed out before he could explain. The next morning, he did not remember any of it. When I brought it up, he said I must have misheard. But you did not believe that. No, I started paying attention, noticing things that did not quite add up, the way he sometimes forgot details about his supposed childhood, the way he changed the subject whenever his family came up. Vanessa finally looked at the prosecutor. But I did not want to believe the truth. I loved him. I thought he loved me. I thought we were going to have a life together. Her voice broke. I was an idiot. When did you know for certain? About 2 months before Eleanor died. I found the passport, the one with his real name, Derek Sloan. And you did not report it? No. Why not? Vanessa was quiet for a long moment. Because I was already in too deep. I had helped him maintain his cover. I had lied for him when his story did not add up. If I reported it, I would have had to explain my own involvement. She laughed bitterly. And because I still loved him, even knowing he was a fraud, even knowing our whole relationship was built on lies, I thought we could figure it out together. Did you know he was planning to kill Eleanor? Vanessa went pale. No, I swear to God, no. He said he was planning to divorce her. Wait until after the baby was born, establish paternity, then file. He said his lawyers were working on breaking the prenup. But you knew something was wrong. I knew he wanted her gone. I knew he resented her. I knew he was frustrated that the baby complicated his plans. She buried her face in her hands. But I did not think he would kill her. I did not think he was capable of that. He had already killed someone, Ms. Crane. Marcus Bennett. You knew that by then. I did not know for certain. I suspected. But I told myself there had to be another explanation. She looked up, tears streaming down her face. I lied to myself because the truth was too horrible to accept. And because of that, Eleanor Hartwell is dead. Vanessa received 3 years in minimum security prison. With good behavior, she would be eligible for parole in 18 months. It was not justice. Not really. Not for Eleanor, not for Marcus, not for anyone except the woman who had helped a murderer hide. But it was something. Sam visited her once. She did not know why she went. Curiosity, maybe. Anger. Some need to understand the woman who had stood beside Derek while Eleanor's life crumbled around her. Vanessa looked different in her orange jumpsuit. Smaller somehow. Older. The glamour that had made her so striking at the funeral had faded into something pale and diminished. Why did you come? Vanessa asked across the visitation table. Sam thought about it. Because Eleanor would have wanted to understand. She was always trying to figure out why people did the things they did, even people who hurt her. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. I loved him. I know that does not matter. I know that does not excuse anything. But I did. I really thought we were going to have a future together. He did not love anyone, Sam said quietly. He was not capable of it. You were just another mark to him. another tool to be used and discarded. I know that now. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of everything that had happened pressing down on both of them. "I am sorry," Vanessa said finally. "I know it does not mean anything. I know it does not change what happened. But I am sorry for all of it." Sam stood to leave. Eleanor believed in second chances. She believed people could change, could grow, could become better than they were. "So maybe someday I will forgive you." She looked down at the woman in orange. "But not today." She walked out without looking back. The Eleanor Hartwell Foundation launched 8 months after the trial ended. Richard donated the initial capital, $50 million from his personal accounts. Another $50 million in pledges from business associates who wanted to honor Eleanor's memory. The mission was simple: help women trapped in fraudulent marriages, provide legal resources to untangle the lies, offer financial support to rebuild their lives, create a network of survivors who could support each other through the hardest parts of starting over. Sam was named executive director. She had quit her job at the hospital the day after the verdict, moved into the office space Richard had purchased in the city, threw herself into the work with a dedication that bordered on obsession. It was the only way she knew how to grieve. The first grant went to a woman named Maria Gonzalez. She had been married for 15 years to a man she thought was a successful businessman. She had 2 children with him. She had built a life around him. Then she discovered he was already married, had been the whole time. He had another family in another state, another wife who did not know Maria existed. Everything she thought she knew was a lie. Maria used the foundation grant to hire a lawyer who specialized in complex divorce cases, to move into an apartment she could afford on her own, to start therapy for herself and her children. She sent Sam a letter 3 months later. The money helped, of course it did, but that was not the most important thing. The most important thing was knowing I was not alone, that someone believed me, that what happened to me was real and wrong and not my fault. Eleanor Hartwell saved my life, and I did not even know her. Sam framed the letter and hung it on her office wall, the first of what would eventually be hundreds. Richard threw himself into the foundation with the same intensity he had brought to building his business empire. He attended every board meeting, reviewed every grant application personally, spoke at fundraisers and awareness events and legislative hearings where he advocated for better protections for fraud victims. It did not bring Eleanor back. Nothing could do that. But it gave him something to do with the rage and grief that threatened to consume him. Something constructive, something meaningful. "Eleanor did not want me to destroy myself," he told Catherine one evening as they sat in the garden she had loved. "She did not want me to spend whatever time I have left drowning in anger and sorrow." "How do you know what she wanted?" "Because I knew her, because she was my daughter, because she spent her last weeks building something to help other people instead of wallowing in her own tragedy." He reached for Catherine's hand. That is who Eleanor was, a builder, a helper, someone who saw a problem and tried to fix it, even when fixing it cost her everything. Catherine squeezed his fingers. "Then we keep building, in her name, for her memory." "Yes," Richard said, "that is exactly what we do." 1 year after Eleanor Hartwell died, the foundation had awarded 212 grants. 212 women who had discovered their marriages were built on fraud. 212 families shattered by deception. 212 new beginnings made possible by Eleanor's legacy. The foundation had grown beyond anything Richard had imagined. Offices in 4 cities, a staff of 35 full-time employees, partnerships with law firms and counseling centers and domestic violence organizations across the country. They had a waiting list now, more applications than they could fund, even with Richard's continued donations. Other philanthropists had started contributing, inspired by Eleanor's story and moved by the work being done in her name. The office itself occupied a renovated building on the Hartwell estate, built where Eleanor's nursery had once been. Richard had insisted. He wanted the foundation to have roots in the same ground where his daughter had planned for her child's future. The pink walls were gone. In their place, floor-to-ceiling windows that flooded the space with natural light. Open floor plans that encouraged collaboration. A garden courtyard where staff and clients could find moments of peace. Sam sat at her desk in the corner office, Eleanor's handwritten letter framed on the wall beside her computer. A reminder of why she was here. A touchstone when the work became too heavy. A young woman sat across from her, 29 years old, two small children, a husband who turned out to have another family she knew nothing about. Jennifer had found out 3 months ago when her husband's other wife called her and screamed at her and accused her of being the homewrecker, when Jennifer had no idea the other woman even existed. Her entire life had collapsed in a single phone call. "I did not know," Jennifer said, her voice trembling. "For 6 years, I had no idea. He traveled for work. That is what he told me. Business trips, conferences, client meetings." Sam handed her tissues, listened without interrupting. She had learned that listening was often more valuable than any advice she could offer. "When I found out, I thought I was losing my mind. I kept thinking I must have missed something. Some sign, some clue. How could I have been so stupid?" Sam shook her head slowly. "You were not stupid. You trusted someone who betrayed that trust. That is not your failure, that is his. But how do I explain that to my children? How do I tell them their father is not who they thought he was?" We have counselors who specialize in exactly that. People who can help you find the right words. Help your kids process what is happening in ways that are appropriate for their ages. Sam pushed a folder across the desk. "This is your grant approval. $30,000. Enough for an apartment, a lawyer, and 6 months of therapy for you and your children." Jennifer stared at the folder like it was made of gold. "I do not know how to thank you. I do not know how to possibly thank you for this. You thank me by getting through this, by rebuilding your life, by being the mother your children need." Sam leaned forward. "And someday, when you are ready, when you are strong again, you help someone else. Pay it forward. That is how this works. That is what Eleanor wanted." Jennifer left an hour later, clutching the folder to her chest, looking lighter than when she arrived. Sam sat alone in her office for a long time afterward, looking at Eleanor's letter, thinking about all the women they had helped and all the women they still could not reach. "You are still saving people, Ellie," she said to the empty room. "Every single day, even now." Richard Hartwell spent his mornings in the memorial garden. He had built it himself mostly, hired landscapers for the heavy work, but did the planting with his own hands. Roses that Eleanor had loved. Milkweed for the monarch butterflies she had always watched for in autumn. A small fountain that bubbled quietly in the center. The sound of water masking the distant noise of the city. He came here every day. Rain or shine, summer heat or winter cold. Sometimes he talked to Eleanor, told her about the foundation, about the women they had helped, about the difference her planning had made. Sometimes he just sat and let the grief wash over him. Today, Catherine joined him. She moved slowly these days. The past year had aged her terribly, but she still had the strength to walk to the garden, to sit beside her husband, to share his sorrow. "The landscaper asked if you wanted to add more roses," she said. "The yellow ones Eleanor liked." "I will think about it." They sat in comfortable silence, watching a butterfly drift between the flowers. "I feel her here," Catherine said softly. "Is that strange? I feel like she is close when I am in this garden." "I feel it too." "Do you think that means something, or is it just us wanting it to be true?" Richard watched the butterfly land on a milkweed leaf, watched it fold and unfold its wings. "I think Eleanor would say it does not matter. If we feel her presence, if that brings us comfort, then it is real enough." Catherine reached for his hand. "I miss her so much, every day. I think about what she would be doing now. The baby would be almost a year old. She would be exhausted and happy and complaining about sleep deprivation. She would be an amazing mother." She was already an amazing mother. She protected that child with everything she had, even when it cost her everything. Richard squeezed his wife's fingers. "That is the Hartwell stubbornness. She got it from both of us." They sat together as the sun moved across the sky. The butterflies came and went. The fountain sang its quiet song. "I am going to start writing a journal," Richard said eventually, "about Eleanor, about who she was, about what she did, so it does not get lost, so people understand she was more than just the victim in a true crime story." "That is a good idea. I want people to know she was funny, that she burned pancakes every single time and laughed about it, that she cried at commercials, that she loved terrible reality television shows she was embarrassed to admit watching. She was human, Catherine said, a real, complicated, wonderful human being. Exactly. That is what I want to capture. Not a saint, not a symbol, a person, my daughter. That evening, Richard sat at his desk and opened a new journal. He stared at the blank page for a long time, trying to find the right words to begin. Finally, he wrote, "My daughter Eleanor was not a hero. At least, she would not have wanted to be called one. She would have rolled her eyes at the very idea, told me I was being dramatic, changed the subject to something ridiculous to make me laugh. But she was brave, braver than anyone I have ever known. When she discovered she was married to a murderer, she did not fall apart. She did not surrender. She did not let the fear paralyze her. She planned. She prepared. She made sure that even if she died, the truth would survive her." That is not heroism in the storybook sense. There were no crowds cheering, no dramatic speeches, just a pregnant woman alone in her house, gathering evidence, preparing for the worst while hoping for the best. But it is the kind of heroism that matters, the quiet kind, the real kind. Eleanor taught me that justice is not about what you get. It is about what you stop, what you prevent, who you protect. She died protecting people she would never meet. Women who would see her story and know they were not alone, not crazy, not trapped forever. That is her legacy. That is what she left behind. Not revenge, rescue. Not anger, action. Not a victim, a guardian. That is who Eleanor Hartwell was. And that is who I will spend the rest of my life remembering. The anniversary of Eleanor's death fell on a cloudy Tuesday in October. Gray skies hung low over the city. A soft rain fell intermittently, the kind that could not decide whether to commit to a storm or retreat into mist. The air smelled of wet leaves and coming winter. Sam drove to the cemetery alone. She had insisted to Richard and Catherine that she needed this time by herself, this ritual of remembrance that she was not ready to share. Eleanor's grave was on a hillside overlooking a small pond. The family had chosen the spot carefully, knowing Eleanor would have wanted a view. Something beautiful to look at for eternity. The headstone was simple gray granite, Eleanor's name, the dates that bounded her too short life. And beneath them, the words she had asked to have inscribed. She fought, she won. The grave was already covered in flowers when Sam arrived. The family had been here earlier. Richard and Catherine, Jonathan and his wife. They had left roses and lilies and a small plush butterfly for the baby who never got to live. Sam added her contribution. Yellow daisies, Eleanor's favorite. She had always said they looked like little suns. She sat on the wet grass beside the headstone, not caring that the moisture soaked through her pants. "Hey, Ellie," she said. "It has been a year." The rain dripped from the trees. The pond rippled in the wind. They caught Vanessa trying to run to Canada. Did I tell you that? Probably not. It was while you were, dead. She laughed at her own dark humor. Eleanor would have appreciated it. She is in prison now, minimum security, 3 years for being an accessory to fraud. She will probably be out in 18 months. Sam pulled at a blade of grass. I visited her once. I do not really know why. Curiosity, I guess. I wanted to see what someone looks like after they help destroy a person's life. She was quiet for a moment. She looked ordinary. That was the worst part. Just an ordinary woman who made terrible choices. Not a monster, not obviously evil. Just someone who wanted to believe lies because the truth was too hard. She looked at Eleanor's name carved in stone. I think about that sometimes. How easy it is to be complicit. How easy it is to look away from things you do not want to see. She pulled out an envelope from her jacket pocket. The paper was worn from being carried for months, waiting for this day. You asked me to read this today, 1 year after, so here I am. She opened it carefully, handling the letter like the precious artifact it was. Eleanor's handwriting filled the page, looping and elegant, the cursive she had learned from her grandmother. Sam, the letter began, if you are reading this, it has been a year, 365 days since I was with you, since I laughed at your terrible jokes, since I complained about your taste in men, since I was alive. I hope the hardest part is over. I hope you have found moments of joy again. I hope you have forgiven me for leaving you with all of this. I want you to know something. That night, the last night when I knew what was coming, I was not sad. I was strangely calm because I knew the plan was in place. The evidence was gathered. The recordings were made. The truth would come out. And I knew you would be there to make sure it happened, to keep my parents going, to run the foundation I dreamed about, to tell my story. You always were my backbone, Sam. The one who believed me when no one else did. The one who helped me fight when I thought I could not fight anymore. So here is my final request. The last thing I will ever ask of you. Live. Not for me, for you. Fall in love again. I know you think you are too old, but that is ridiculous, and you know it. You are 33, not 90. Open your heart to someone who deserves it. Take that trip to Italy you always talked about, the one you kept putting off because of work, because of money, because of all the excuses we make when we are afraid to really live. Eat the pasta, drink the wine, stand in front of the David and cry because it is beautiful and you are alive to see it. Let yourself be happy. Please, I am begging you. Do not let Derek take 2 lives. Do not let grief be his final victory. I loved you. I love you still. And I will be watching, probably judging your wine choices. Forever your friend, Ellie. Sam laughed through the tears streaming down her face. You are definitely judging my wine choices. I had a $15 bottle last week that you would have thrown across the room. She folded the letter carefully, tucked it back in the envelope. I booked the Italy trip, by the way, next month. Florence and Rome and the Amalfi Coast. 3 weeks of doing nothing but looking at beautiful things and eating too much. She wiped her eyes. And I met someone. His name is David. He is a high school teacher. History, which you would tease me about because I barely passed history in college. She smiled. He is kind, patient. He makes me laugh. He knows about you, about what happened, and he does not try to fix me or rush me through my grief. He just lets me feel what I feel. I think you would like him. I think you would approve. The rain had stopped. A patch of blue appeared in the gray clouds. I'm going to be happy again, Ellie. I can feel it starting. There are moments now, little spaces between the sadness, where I actually feel joy. It feels like betrayal sometimes, like being happy means forgetting you. But I know that is not what you wanted. You wanted me to live, really live, not just go through the motions. So that is what I am going to do. She stood, brushing wet grass from her clothes. I will come back next year, and the year after, and every year until I am too old to climb this hill. I will tell you about Italy, about David, about all the women the foundation is helping. I will keep your memory alive, not as a tragedy, as a triumph. A butterfly drifted past, monarch, orange and black. It should not have been there. The migration was over, the season too late. It landed on Eleanor's headstone, rested there for a moment, wings slowly opening and closing. Then it lifted off and flew toward the sun, breaking through the clouds. Sam watched it go. Show off, she murmured. You always had to have the last word. She turned and walked back toward her car. The cemetery was peaceful now. The rain had washed everything clean. Behind her, the flowers on Eleanor's grave swayed in the breeze. The headstone gleamed with moisture. And somewhere, in some way that could not be explained, a presence lingered, watching, approving, finally at peace. 3 years later, the Eleanor Hartwell Foundation had become one of the largest victims' rights organizations in the country. 1,200 grants awarded, 4,000 women helped directly, 27 states with active programs providing legal assistance, counseling, and financial support to fraud victims. The story had been told and retold. Documentaries had won awards. Books had become bestsellers. A feature film had earned 3 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture. Eleanor Hartwell had become a symbol, an icon, a name that meant something. But to the people who had known her, she was still just Ellie, the woman who laughed too loud at her own jokes, who burned pancakes every single Saturday morning and never learned to cook them properly. Who could not pass a bookstore without buying something she would probably never have time to read? The woman who was kind and complicated and perfectly imperfect. The woman who had been brave when bravery seemed impossible. Richard and Catherine celebrated their 42nd wedding anniversary that autumn. A small party at the estate, family and close friends, good wine and better company. They danced in the garden Eleanor had loved, slow and careful, the way people dance when they have been together so long, they move as one. She would have been 35 this year, Catherine said quietly. I know. The baby would be 3, starting to talk in sentences, asking why about everything. I know. Do you think about it? What their lives would have been like? Richard pulled his wife closer. Every day, but I try not to dwell on it. Eleanor would not want us living in what might have been. She would want us here, present, living the life we have. She was always better at that than me, being present. She learned it from you. Catherine laughed softly. I do not know about that. I do. You taught her to appreciate small moments, beautiful things, the pleasure of an ordinary Tuesday when nothing special happens and everything is okay. That sounds like something she would say. It is. She told me once, a few years before everything happened. She said you taught her that happiness is not a destination. It is noticing when you are already there. Catherine wiped her eyes. I miss her so much. I know, me too, every single day. They swayed together under the autumn stars. The music played softly from speakers hidden in the garden. The butterflies had gone south, but their flowers remained, waiting for spring. Sam stood at the edge of the garden, watching the celebration. She had come a long way in 3 years. Italy, twice. Paris, once. A new apartment in the city that felt like home. David beside her, his hand warm in hers. They were married now. Small ceremony at the courthouse, family and close friends only. Eleanor would have teased her about not having a big wedding, but would have understood. Some things did not need an audience. The foundation was in excellent hands. Sam had stepped back from daily operations, letting the team she had built carry the mission forward. She still served on the board, still reviewed major grants, still kept Eleanor's vision alive. But she had learned to have a life beyond the work, just like Eleanor had asked. She was writing a book, Eleanor's story, the true version, the one that captured who she really was, not just the facts of what happened to her. The publisher wanted to call it The Will. Sam was holding out for something simpler. Ellie, just her name, just the woman behind the legend. That night after the anniversary party ended and the guests went home, Sam walked through the memorial garden alone. The moon was full. The flowers glowed silver in its light. The fountain sang its endless song. She stopped at the small plaque Richard had installed 3 years ago. Just Eleanor's name and the butterfly insignia of the foundation. Hey you, Sam said softly. It is late. I should probably be in bed. The wind rustled the leaves. I finished the book draft. Finally, after 3 years of writing and rewriting and crying into my keyboard. She sat on the bench beside the plaque. It is good, I think. It is honest. You come across as a real person, not a saint. The parts where you were scared and uncertain and human. She looked up at the stars. David read it. He cried. He said he felt like he knew you now, even though you never met. A pause, but I wish you could have met him. I wish you could come to dinner and interrogate him and tell me all the things I am too close to see. But I know you approve. I can feel it. She pulled Eleanor's last letter from her pocket. The paper was almost falling apart now, worn soft from years of being read and reread. I am happy, Ellie. Really, truly happy. The kind of happy you hoped I would find. It took a long time. There were years when I thought I would never feel this way again, when the grief was so heavy I could barely breathe. But I kept going, just like you asked. I lived. I fell in love. I ate the pasta and drank the wine and stood in front of the David and cried. She smiled at the memory. It was beautiful. You were right. You are always right. The wind picked up. The flowers swayed. I will never forget you. Never. You are part of me now, part of everything I am and everything I do. A single butterfly appeared. Monarch. Impossibly late in the season. It should not have been there at all. It landed on Sam's shoulder, rested there for a moment, wings slowly moving. Then it flew away, toward the moon, toward the stars, toward whatever waited beyond. Sam watched it disappear into the darkness. "Show off," she whispered. She stood and walked back toward the house where David waited, where her life waited, where the future Eleanor had wanted for her was unfolding, day by ordinary day. Behind her, the garden settled into silence. The fountain sang, the flowers dreamed of spring, and the memory of Eleanor Hartwell lived on. In the foundation that bore her name, in the lives that had been changed by her sacrifice, in the hearts of everyone who had loved her. Not a victim, never a victim, a fighter, a guardian, a woman who won. The prison door had been unlocked all along. She had just been the first one brave enough to push it open. And now, 3 years later, thousands of women had followed her through. That was her legacy. That was her gift. Not death, not tragedy, not even justice, freedom. The story ends here, but it does not really end. Because somewhere out there, right now, a woman is discovering the truth about her marriage. She is finding the hidden accounts, the secret phone, the other life her husband has been living. She is feeling that terrible, crushing weight, the loneliness, the fear, the certainty that she is trapped forever. But then she hears about Eleanor Hartwell. She reads the book. She watches the documentary. She learns what is possible. And she realizes something that changes everything. She is not alone. She is not crazy. She is not trapped. There is help. There are resources. There are people who have walked this path before and survived to tell the tale. She picks up the phone. She calls the foundation. She takes the first step on a journey that will eventually lead her back to herself. And somewhere, somehow, Eleanor smiles. Because this is what she wanted, not revenge, not punishment, rescue. One woman at a time, one story at a time, one courageous step at a time. The foundation continues to grow. The work continues to matter. The legacy continues to live. And the butterflies keep coming to the garden. Every spring, every summer, every fall, they land on the flowers Eleanor loved. They drift through the air she breathed. They carry something of her with them. Memory, love, hope. The things that cannot be destroyed. The things that last forever. The things that make the fight worthwhile. So this is not goodbye. This is not an ending. This is just the beginning. For every woman who reads this story and recognizes herself. For every survivor who needs to know it is possible. For everyone who has ever felt trapped and alone and powerless. You are not alone. You are seen. You are believed. You are worthy of rescue. And somewhere out there, Eleanor Hartwell is watching. She is cheering you on. She is believing in you. Even though she never met you, even though she never knew your name. She fought for you. She died for you. She made sure there would be help waiting for you, because that is who she was. A mother who never got to hold her child, a daughter who broke her parents' hearts, a friend who left behind letters to guide the ones she loved, a woman who refused to be silenced, a woman who spoke from beyond the grave, a woman who won, and you can win too. The door is unlocked. It has always been unlocked. Push it open, walk through, live. And that is the story of Eleanor Hartwell, a woman who turned her darkest moment into her greatest victory. If this story moved you, if you felt your heart racing during those revelations, if you found yourself cheering for Eleanor from beyond the grave, then I have a small favor to ask. Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell so you never miss another story like this one. Drop a comment below and tell me what hit you the hardest. Was it the red dress at the funeral? The DNA reveal? Or Eleanor's final letter to her best friend? I read every single comment, and I love hearing what resonates with you. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Maybe a friend going through a difficult time. Maybe someone who needs to know that even in the darkest situations, there is always a way to fight back. And if you have not already, give this video a thumbs up. It helps more people find these stories, and it lets me know you want more content like this. Thank you for staying with me until the end. Your support means everything. Until next time, remember this. The truth always finds its way into the light. Always.